What's happening, everybody? It's Guillermo here from ScreenRealm.com once again, back for another episode of Screen Realm Weekly, where I talk about the week that was in the world of film and television, and I tell you about some of the biggest stories that have occurred. Let's kick off with Christopher Nolan's next film. It's going to be titled Oppenheimer. It's officially on the way, and it's going to be starring Cillian Murphy, the Peaky Blinders star who has worked with Nolan on Batman Begins, Dunkirk, Inception. So Murphy will be starring in this film, and he'll be playing the lead character, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the American scientist who had a big role to play in the creation of the atom bomb. The first atom bomb was successfully detonated on July 1945. The following month, it was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing between 129,000 to 226,000 people. A terrible day in history and a pivotal moment in World War II. Oppenheimer would later lobby for international control of nuclear power to avert nuclear proliferation and stop an arms race. Oppenheimer was also later opposed to the development of the hydrogen bomb. Now, Nolan will be directing from his own screenplay based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning book American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Kai Bird and the late Martin J. Sherwin. Sherwin sadly passed away just recently on October 6th following a battle with lung cancer. Oppenheimer will be reuniting Nolan with a number of behind-the-scenes creatives that he's worked with before, including cinematographer Hoyt Van Hoytema, who worked on Tenet, Interstellar, Dunkirk. Amazing work in those films from Hoytema. Also on board is editor Jennifer LeMay, who was editor on Christopher Nolan's Tenet. Her credits also include Marriage Story, Hereditary, Manchester by the Sea, and Mistress America, among many other films. And on board as composer is Ludwig Göransson, who was the composer of Tenet, and whose credits also include Black Panther and The Mandalorian. So there we have some of the behind-the-scenes talent that we know of so far. IMAX 65mm and 65mm large format film for this one. Nolan, of course, is aiming for a theatrical release. That's part of his requirements that he had when a lot of the studios were looking to jump on board this film. Universal Pictures ended up landing this one. The film has now been given a release date, so take note of this one. Oppenheimer will be opening in the US on July 21st, 2023. That July date is generally a date that's been given to a number of Nolan films, so Universal's happy to keep that going. This will find Nolan working away from the Warner Brothers system, or the Warner Brothers studio, for one of the first times in around 10 movies or something like that. So there we go. Oppenheimer, can't wait for this one. Next up, production has wrapped on a brand new Hellraiser film. This Hellraiser is aiming to reboot the franchise, and they're going back to the source material with some of their creative decisions. As fans of the horror franchise will no doubt know, the first film was from 1987, was written and directed by Clive Barker. Now, Clive Barker is actually on board this new film as producer, and he's given the film his blessing. The film is coming from Spyglass Media Group and Hulu, and is going to be released on Hulu, which is a US streaming service for those that may not know what Hulu is. It's going to be coming from director David Bruckner, who previously directed horror films The Night House and Netflix film The Ritual. The Ritual is quite a good little film. The ending seems to be quite polarizing, but I really enjoyed it. The Ritual, check that out. The screenplay comes from Luke Piotrowski and Ben Collins, who penned Bruckner's The Night House and the 2017 dark coming-of-age film Super Dark Times. That's a pretty good film as well. An interesting bit of casting is the casting of Sense8 and the L-Word Generation Q actress Jamie Clayton as the new iteration of Pinhead, marking the first time an actress and a transgender person is taking on the role of the Cenobite. Actor Doug Bradley previously played the demonic being in 8 of the franchise's films. Now, casting an actress in this role, the film is going to be going to the source material. So Barker's original novel, The Hellbound Heart, described the Cenobite as almost genderless, albeit with a feminine lean. A quote from that first book: "Its voice, unlike that of its companion, was light and breathy, the voice of an excited girl." So for anyone that's up in arms regarding this casting, it's also probably important for you to know that a female Pinhead was also depicted in the Hellraiser comic book series from Boom Studios. In a statement, Barker said, "Having seen some of the designs from David Bruckner's new Hellraiser film, they pay homage to what the first film created, but then take it to places it's never been before. This is a Hellraiser on a scale that I simply didn't expect. David and his team are steeped in the story's mythology, but what excites me is their desire to honor the original, even as they revolutionize it for a new generation." So whatever Barker has so far seen or discussed or read from this film, he's pretty happy. Next up, Keira Knightley has signed up to star in a true story drama titled Boston Strangler. The film is to be written and directed by Matt Ruskin, who previously directed 2017 Lakeith Stanfield drama Crown Heights and the indie film Booster. Ridley Scott is on board as a producer on this film, which will be telling the true story of reporter Loretta McLaughlin. Working for Record American during the 1960s, McLaughlin was the first reporter to connect the murders and break the story of this serial killer, who she and fellow reporter Gene Cole dubbed the Boston Strangler in a 4-part article that they had written up. While challenging the sexism of the period, McLaughlin and Cole worked hard and put themselves at great risk to report on the serial killer, and on top of that, uncover corruption that would put doubt on the identity of the killer. In writing the screenplay for Boston Strangler, Ruskin reportedly researched both McLaughlin and Cole's actual findings from the early 60s and met with both of their families. Cameras on Boston Strangler will begin rolling this December in Boston. Following our episode last week where I talked a little bit about Guy Ritchie's upcoming spy film, go check out episode 1 if you want to know a little bit more about that. Jake Gyllenhaal looks to be on board an upcoming Guy Ritchie film that Ritchie will be directing and writing. Deadline broke the news about this, saying that there isn't much known about the film other than it fitting into Ritchie's visual style that audiences have loved for years. Apparently this will be Gyllenhaal's next film, as it's expected to be shooting by the end of this year. And in more Jake Gyllenhaal news, the actor is going to be starring in Prophet, a adaptation of a comic book from Deadpool creator Rob Liefeld. Now this is expected to launch a big franchise. It's going to be centering on John Prophet, played by Gyllenhaal, a man who gains superhuman strength after being conscripted by the Germans and subjected to scientific experiments during World War II. Writing the screenplay is Mark Guggenheim, known for DC shows such as Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow. The film's director is going to be Sam Hargrave, the stunt coordinator turned filmmaker who had quite the hit with his first film, Extraction, starring Chris Hemsworth. You may have seen it. It's apparently still the most watched movie that Netflix has ever had so far. And it's official, That 70s Show is getting a sequel series that's called That 90s Show, and it's going to be heading to Netflix. On board to star Kurtwood Smith and Deborah Jo Rupp, who will be reprising their respective roles as Red Foreman and Kitty Foreman from That 70s Show. So fans of that show, hey, you got 2 of your lead characters back. They're also going to be executive producing that series alongside the creators and That 70s Show alum Greg Metler, who serves as showrunner here. Now this story is going to be set in Wisconsin in 1995, following Leah Foreman, who is the daughter of Topher Grace's character Eric from That 70s Show, and Laura Preppon's Donna. We'll be with Foreman as she visits her grandparents for the summer and bonds with a new generation of Point Place kids, of course, under the watchful eye of Kitty and the stern glare of Red. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll never dies, reads the description. It just changes clothes. As of now, there aren't any other announcements regarding cast members from That 70s Show being on board, although Grace, Prepon, and Ashton Kutcher, they're expected to be on board in guest appearances. There's also no release date as of yet for That 90s Show, although we do know that it'll have 10 episodes. So stay tuned for more on that. And some good news if you're a fan of Foundation, the Apple TV Plus sci-fi series that only came out 2 weeks ago. It's only had, at the time of recording, 4 episodes so far, but it's been generally pretty well received. Season 2 greenlit by Apple. For those who don't know, the series is based on Isaac Asimov's book trilogy, and it stars Jared Harris and Lee Pace, and it chronicles the epic saga of the Foundation, a band of exiles who find that they have to defy the Galactic Empire in order to save it all. Decent overall scores for the series so far. Like I said, it's only had a handful of episodes, 71% on Rotten Tomatoes and 60% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's have a look on IMDb, shall we? I know a lot of people don't like IMDb scores, Rotten Tomatoes scores, but I generally think that it's a pretty good way to get a general kind of idea as to what people are thinking. Foundation IMDb 7.5, so yes, pretty well received show. Season 2 on the way for that. And just before I go, Timothée Chalamet has shared a look at himself in character in the upcoming film Wonka, where he's playing a young Willy Wonka. The film is going to be directed by Paul King, known for Paddington 1 and 2, charming little films. Chalamet certainly looks the part in this outfit. There's not much known about the plot, apart from the fact that it's going to be an origin story before he created the chocolate factory, and maybe it's going to have when he met an Oompa Loompa. Chalamet is expected to be singing and dancing in this film. So yes, looking forward to seeing what this is all about when it comes out. That about does it for me, guys. Thanks once again for joining me. Screen Realm Weekly. Come back here next week where I'm going to be talking more about some of the latest entertainment news. Be sure to go to screenrealm.com where we cover all the latest movie, TV news, trailers, reviews. I'll put the links in the description down there, so check us out. Be sure to also subscribe and hit that bell so you can join us on the YouTubes whenever we turn up on them. So that's it. Thanks so much, guys. Catch you next week.